Hi folks, thanks for joining for another session. Last time I talked around the channel strategy and basically how I'm going to change my approach to creating videos. And with this one, I want to look at how people can get started by using the Power Platform by taking maybe a worked example. It's not fully complete, but it kind of shows you the building blocks to get from nothing and maybe not even an idea through to something that's actually functional and you can use in a day-to-day. Adding on to that, I can give you some details around timeline as to how long it is taking me to actually build this part of the solution out. So if I jump into my first point, so looking at the solution, where in this instance I'm looking at property management, and when it comes to property management, there's multiple different aspects to it. And I thought, well, rather than me, looking at some examples from maybe clients I've worked with or just some ideas I've thought of, I thought, right, well, let's just standardize the approach and typically look at what's involved with property management. So in my experience, it's usually a case of a client has come to me and said, you know what, I've got this specific issue, can you fix it? And we can come in and we can resolve that issue, that's not a problem. But what I wanted to look at here, which was slightly different, was, well, I don't maybe live and breathe property management. It's not a business that I sitting on a day to day. So there will be things that, although I can tick most of the boxes, there'll be elements that maybe I don't look at as often. So I've used OpenAI and using the GPT-4 model. It is the paid for model. I think it works out to be £20 per month. You get a whole load of extra features, and I'm sure I can do another video on that at a later date. But essentially, I asked it the question initially: what should a property management include regarding features? And it's come away and it's called out a few different elements, tenant management being one of them, financial management, property maintenance, document management, communication tools, reporting and analytics, listings and marketings, a whole load of functionality in here, which has given me a really good building block to go, right, these are elements that I need to probably build into a solution. And what I've then done is said, right, let's take the first component of this. And I was looking at tenant management. So what sort of things do I want to include with tenant management? So I'll build on that a bit further, and I've asked it to go away and say, well, what typical information should I capture about a lease? And that's come through and given me information such as details around the lease, property details, terms of the lease, financial details, and a few other different elements that come into that. And I've gone on a bit further to say, what information do I need to capture about a property? And it's gone through and called out a few different elements here. So I could potentially take this further, and in this case I've got maintenance as well. But I could potentially take this further and start asking it questions such as, list these fields in such a way that allows me to create them in Dynamics or in Dataverse. So let's give that a go. So if we look at specifically, and this is really a bit of a live demo, so hopefully it all goes well. So if we look at maintenance request, if I do list the fields from maintenance request, including data type, which would enable me to create a table in Dataverse as part of the Power Platform. So we'll see what comes off the back of this. And there we go. So we can see it's actually going to start going away and creating some of these fields for us and giving us some information about it. What I tend to find from a low-code standpoint, this is going to give you really some handheld instructions on how to actually get started by creating that schema within your table. But you can see it's going to go through, quickly generate a number of fields for me, bit of extra information, and ultimately it'll come to the end and give me some values. I think what would be nice, where we've got things like status, obviously with standard tables you have your status and status reason. You might want to make use of some of those. But I think in terms of an initial run through, it gives you an idea of the type of fields that you can develop and bring in. I'm just going to stop that from generating for now. And we can see it's given us a lot of information to go on. So my next step is I want to ensure that when I'm creating my solution, I'm doing it in such a way which ensures that I can chunk it up, move it into new environments. That way, if I have a development space, I can package that all up into such a format where a user's not likely to go in production and make changes to it, Also, if I want to do some change control or management, I can do that within my solution. There's a whole load of other reasons why you would want to use solutions. These are just a few, and what I want to do is keep it high level for now, just so people can get started. So taking the information that I've highlighted here, what I can do is go in and create the tables I need. And in this instance, I've taken accountant and contact as standard system tables. And I've gone through and made some changes. I'll start off with these system tables first to give you an idea of what we can do. So inside of here, you've got my contact table. We've got a number of different components. So on the view down here, so this is our list, we can see we can customize this to our heart's content. We've got different forms that we can configure, and ultimately our columns. If I jump into the columns first, essentially all I've done is I've added in one more column, which is type. Out the box, contact's going to come with a lot of information such as full name, email address, phone number. And if we refer back to what we have in ChatGPT here, is we've actually got things such as the contact email, contact phone number, and using my own knowledge of understanding understanding the system and the architecture behind it, I know I can potentially look out to a contact record. And that's potentially something that, if you're looking at this for the first time, you may just want to do a bit of dig into the system, what you get as standard, just something about how these come together rather than creating things from scratch from GPT. So there's a bit of a learning curve there. Adding to that, if I look at my forms, we'll give that a second just to load up. So I have a property contacts form. Again, there are other main forms and quick forms and other options here that you get out of the box. But in my case, I've created a brand new form. And what I can do is I can go through and edit that. And in terms of editing forms within the Power Platform, it's it's a low code interface. So I can drag and drop components. So in this instance, I have my forms here. I've got a set layout. We've got a timeline function, which I'll show in a bit more detail later on. And ultimately, if I want to add more fields, I can just take my field, drag and drop it over, and there we go. It pulls it straight into the form for us. I'm just going to remove that for now. But you can see how we have all the information in place, and we have that type field, which I showed you previously, along with other information. In this instance, we've also added a subgrid. So this is looking at related properties. Again, to add a subgrid, go to the components, add subgrid, and it'll ask you what you want to bring through. And in my instance, I was looking at related records, and I'd set up maintenance plans. So I can just go down to maintenance. I can quickly find where they are, maintenance requests, and I can choose which view I'm using to display. I'll just discard that for now. And you can see here we have those listed on the form. Once I'm happy, just click save and publish, and we're good to go. Just going to leave that for now. In terms of the other tables that we have created some custom tables. And you can see here that with the prefix of JF, you can see which ones are custom, as in not out of the box. So what I can do with this is I can go into each one of these and again look at it in a similar way. But in this instance, again, we have a customized view. And if I look at my columns, you can see I have a load more in here. And that's because these are nested within the solution. Adding on to that, there are additional fields in here that I've created. So things like leaseholder contact, lease terms, and so on. In addition to the form, all the fields available at the box, such as modified by, modified on. So that way you've got full history of what's going on with the record. You can take all this a step further. So in terms of the solution, if I go to my three dots here and go to properties, I do have the option to enable attachments. So this is going to allow us to manage our timeline. I can come through here and apply duplicate detection out of the box. I can track changes. I can have an audit log. I can potentially covertly audit records by using different security rules. Treat it as an activity, integrate with SharePoint for document management, and a load of other capabilities. And again, all of these can be extended. Once I have my tables defined, what I can then do is build a model-driven app. And with my model-driven app, I can, if I quickly come into here and edit, this is going to allow us to start building out a sitemap and building out the components we want to display as part of our solution. So in my instance here, I've got my navigation. We have a group on the side, and within each one we've grouped the records. So you've got vendor organizations, which is actually just accounts. But what we can do is rename those fields to align with what the organization is looking for. Likewise with the contacts view, if you want to rename that or customize how that looks and feels, that's all available out of the box. Where we have properties and maintenance requests, these are custom tables. And again, we can rename these and change them based on what we think is relevant to the organization. Same with maintenance requests. And then finally, we have leases. And what we could do is have multiple areas. So we could have an area based on the different job role and even start putting the security roles around this. But at this point, we are looking at it as a very much standard out of the box. How quickly and easily can we get this up and running? So if I take you into the actual app itself, when a user signs in this instance, they're going to land on vendor organizations. What we can do, and what I'd recommend, is building dashboards. Now, to add a dashboard into your app is easy enough to do. Essentially, we can come into here, we can add in additional components. If I go to new here, we could add in a dashboard and we can start adding different charts or embedding reports if we wanted to. I don't have anything set up in this instance, so we'll leave that for now. But you can see here we've got a number of different items that we can embed. Included with that is if we need to embed or integrate with another system in the form of an iframe, there is the option to add web resources or custom pages. So in this instance, we have our vendor organizations. I can create these. I can select my record, and inside of here, I can customize my form, which I've touched on already. In this instance, we've just got maintenance solutions, and we're using this as a vendor. So we're treating this as someone who we might go out to provide maintenance on our properties. We also have our contacts. So in this instance, we have myself, Jay Fitzhenry. I'm down as a contractor in the system, and I work for maintenance solutions. What I could do is that I could create a new record, and we could say we have a tenant. We may put this as Joe Blogs. Actually, if I get rid of that and pop that in there. And we could go through and populate this with more information. They wouldn't have an organization, so we could potentially, based on the type, show and hide different fields. In this instance, I haven't got that configured, but we have this concept of business rules that allow us to achieve that. Now again, I can touch on that in a further video. Once that's saved, we can see information such as our timeline. So maybe we have an information such as late payment. So we can add that in. And if we wanted to capture additional information such as maybe there's a reason for the late payment, we can get that sorted. We have maintenance requests, which I'll touch on in a moment. And here we've also got any active leases they're involved in. And we'll come back to this in a moment with Joe Blogs. If I look at my properties, I'm going to jump onto PMS House here, so Property Management Solution House. We've got the type commercial, we've got the current status is available, got some information around the address. We also have a timeline. So again, if we want to add in any notes in here, we can do that. Additionally, if we wanted to enable other activities such as email, phone calls related to that property, we can add those into this system, including attachments. We've also got details about the property, maybe when it was built, when it was purchased, previous owners, and a number of other elements that come into this, such as insurance details or the renovation history. When it comes to maintenance requests, potentially there's an issue, or we want something done with the property, so we can come into here, create a new request. As standard, we can add in auto number fields. So if I come into here and we just name the request faulty boiler, if I save that, we have the request ID automatically populated, and again we can get that to be done as a user comes in and saves the record. We can display and hide the fields as and when needed. Maybe we're linking that to a property. Potentially there's a contact who we need to speak to, probably myself again. Any descriptions, the boiler is showing an error code. Maybe with that saved, and we could potentially then look at going out to partner organizations to resolve the issue. It could be a case of, we go to a technician, we go to maintenance solutions to resolve the problem. They want to start on Friday. Maybe they've already gone through and they started the work. Maybe they started a day sooner. So they actually started on, if we look at this, maybe they started on the 19th. And the estimated completion, they'd say, well, actually, yeah, we can complete that by Friday. They've gone through, it's in progress, and we could potentially do some automation off the back of that, where maybe, yes, they need to replace the boiler, but it requires sign-off. So we can go, yep, authentic sign-off required. We can say it's been authorized, and we could do happy to go ahead. And for that piece of work, there may be an estimated cost. It's going to cost, I don't know, £2,500 to complete the work. Maybe as they've gone through and got the parts priced up labour, that ends up being closer to 2,300. And then there's an invoice number, which again we can add those in for the finance capabilities. And if we want to track when that's been paid, we can go through and say, yeah, we partially paid, or that's been paid in full. If we then look at the leases in this system, so if I wanted to create a new lease, again, I can just go through, click the plus icon, pop the name of the lease. So if we go with Joe Blogs, we put 2023. The contact is Joe Blogs. Maybe they want to pay via direct debit. They're going to be looking at PMS House. They're going to look at moving into that property, if we say the 1st of November, and then the end date, maybe they're going to be in there for a year. So we can go into here, jump to the next year, look at November again. So they're going to be in for a year. And any additional information we want to capture about the lease, we can capture at that point. If there's a deposit that they've paid, so maybe they paid several months deposit, maybe let's say 3 months deposit. Any conditions to that, maybe don't break anything, or maybe some of the additional information you want to capture, additional charges and so on, put in their monthly amount. Are there any penalties if they're late? The payment date, we can set that to be potentially on the first day of the month. And then if there's any grace period for internal, so again, we only apply our late penalties after 5 days. And again, if there's additional information we want to capture here, we can pop that in the timeline, which maybe there's a note, holiday request, payment will be later this month due to holiday, expected, don't apply late fee. So we can add those in there, and if we wanted to, we could integrate with that with a Power Page. So that's an external portal to allow the tenants to go through and manage their own details in the system. But if I go back to Joe Blogs for a moment, again, if there's any issues that come up that are linked to Joe, if I quickly change one of these over, so potentially the person requesting it could have been Joe Blogs in the first instance. If I go back to my contacts, we can see that Joe would have an active maintenance request. And what we could do with things such as the dashboards is show how many maintenance requests are there any which are overdue, and that way, in terms of the tenants that you have, you can serve them in a more efficient manner. Again, equally, it provides a single portal for those tenants to interact with yourself. Now, this is very much looking at a solution focused around tenant management, property, and maintenance requests, which if you're a landlord, great, perfect. This is completely off the shelf pretty much. If you've got more of a management around estates or different facilities and so on, you can see how easy the system is to update. So again, it's just coming into this back end, looking at your solutions and just going through adding tables and adding fields. In terms of how long it's taken this solution to be built, this has taken around about an hour total to put together, and you have all this functionality available out of the box. If you want to do this in an efficient way, I'd always recommend going down the route of documentation, planning up front, doing testing and handover, and ultimately looking at passing through to a support function. But if you just want to get started, it's as easy as just dragging and dropping some fields. So hopefully you found that very useful. It is very straightforward, very basic, I'd say, but you can see the value that it's going to deliver. And if you're looking at using the Power Platform and looking to adopt it going forward, it's a brilliant example or a use case that could help you on that journey. But what I would say is the Power Platform is designed to resolve an infinite number of problems. This is just one of few that's available. And again, what you might find is there are solutions off the shelf with Dynamics and so on, which may deliver a lot of this very quickly and very easily without having to need to develop anything. And just really depends on what your situation is and what scenario you're looking to resolve. So like I said, hopefully you found that useful. Any queries, put them in the comments below. And again, my LinkedIn's always available and my message is available. So if you want to talk about it in any more detail or jump onto a phone call and see potentially how I could help you further or any guidance I could provide, please reach out.